Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of Break Cycle. Me, your host, Joshua Smith. I hope everyone's having a wonderful Tuesday. We're doing a Tuesday show.
We are.
That's exciting.
It's good to be back on a Tuesday.
Yeah, I know Ryan was missing his Tuesday shows for sure. He's like, what do you mean we're not doing a show on Tuesday anymore? What's going on here?
Yeah.
Well, you know.
My life was empty. I looked forward to this.
The man's got a baby on the way and his life was empty. Come on.
Yeah, it's on the way. Like, it's not here yet.
But
And when it gets here, I'll be like, oh my God, why are we doing 2 shows a week?
I also have a baby on the way, and I know that life is not empty when you have a baby on the way. You got a lot to do. A lot of ice cream runs, random things that you got to pick up.
Okay, the request for today is my wife, who is currently at work in a Hy-Vee, is requesting that I go and buy watermelon.
Oh yeah, no, my wife does that shit all the time. She'll be like on the way home. She's like, hey, I'm gonna be home in 5 minutes. When I get home, can you hop in the van and go get me this? I'm like, really? It's part of dadding, dude. It's how it works. Guys, we got a great show for you tonight. I'm very, 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 very excited. Let's get to talk about some sponsors first. First, we've got TopLobster.com, the man, the myth, the legend, my good friend and partner on Break Cycle, where you can get this great Ron Paul, it didn't have to be this way hoodie that you see me wearing tonight by using BTC at checkout for a 10% discount, or you can join the Patreon, subscribe star, or become a member of the YouTube channel under all of my videos by hitting the join link, where you can get into a private Discord server and get up to 30% off of all Top's new gear 2 weeks before it goes to the general public. Good stuff, I promise you, it's worth it. He's a great dude.
He is, and he deserves to be free on Twitter. Free Top Lobster.
Free my dude Top Lobster on Twitter. He didn't do anything wrong. It really, all he did was suggest that Elon Musk puts a politician into a rocket ship to space.
Well, that's not what he got initially banned for.
Oh, well, that's the excuse they gave.
When he got unbanned, what they said, it was a tweet a couple months ago when he said we should bring Stoney back.
Oh, right. Yeah, he goes a little hard sometimes.
Yep.
I will say that. And of course, we got PeaceHawk.coffee. With this small coffee roasting business, PeaceHawk will sell delicious micro-batch roasted coffee online while donating at least $1 of every pound sold to worthy foreign aid organizations like Yemen Relief and Reconstruction Foundation, who has expressed support for this project. While their initial focus will be on Yemen, Ethiopian coffee, they'll also have some affordable Central American varieties available too. However, PeaceHawk will always donate at least $1 from every pound sold to worthy foreign aid organizations. When you buy PeaceHawk coffee, you're not only buying great coffee, you have a chance to support the economies of countries struggling against the effects of war, support stellar private aid foundations doing life-saving work abroad, support stateside peace activists like myself, my good friend Ryan here, my friend Will Hobson, who started this great coffee company, and everybody who's really been on the show. We don't have a lot of pro-war people on the show. The name PeaceHawk will be the counter to the Warhawk, who is aggressively pro-war. This company will be aggressively pro-peace. Sign up for their email list today at peacehawk.coffee and get alerts when all that stuff goes live. We have a bunch of it's really good coffee, dude. I really enjoy it. I'm a big fan. And you know, Julie is obsessed with coffee. So guys, we got a great show for you tonight. Like I said, I'm very, very excited tonight. As you guys know, for the 2 years that the COVID regime was really digging into us, I spent a lot of time rallying against that and saying that we were going to have to do some kind of mass non-compliance to make this shit go away. I didn't think it was ever going to get better. It was hell for a lot of people, especially on the coasts. You know, I was lucky enough to move to Iowa right as this started, and it was kind of like a shield for myself and my family, and I'm very happy to be here in the corn state, the state of corn, or the land of ranch dressing that I like to say. But some people weren't as lucky. As you guys might have seen, there was a lot of stuff going on with bands. We had my good friend JJ Boogie on the show quite a few months ago, who's been the guitarist in Arrested Development for many years, decades. And his record label basically forced him to get the jab, saying that he would not be allowed to tour out of country with the band if he didn't. And he had tons of terrible experiences afterwards. But one of the stories that we heard quite a bit was the band Offspring, who, you know, a lot of us, me at 40 years old, of course, I grew up with this band. You know, it was like one of the bands that I paid a lot of attention to. Ixnay on the Hombre was probably one of the albums that set me on my punk rock musical journey, as far as, you know, my teen years. And so we heard that the drummer Pete Parada was removed from the band for his own personal medical decisions. But this gentleman's also been in other bands that were really great. Face to Face, of course, saves the day. Great bands. He is Mr. Pete Parada. Sir, how are you doing tonight?
Great. Thanks so much for having me. Good
Yeah,
to
I'm
be
very
here.
excited to have you, man. It's I every once in a while doing something this show, I get to have somebody on that I like really respect and like a fan of, and this is one of the shows. So I'm just gonna be all giddy over here while you talk. But what you before we get into the crazy stuff, why don't you tell me about your musical journey, how you got to be in some of these great bands, when it started, all that good stuff, man.
Oh, I mean, how far back do you want to go?
We can. When did you first pick up the drumsticks?
Oh, little kid, little guy. My dad was a middle school, high school band director. So he played, all the instruments. There was always music in our house. And I had two older brothers, one that played the clarinet and the other played the saxophone. So I was always kind of banging on pots and pans and grabbing wooden spoons and things out of the kitchen and making racket. So when it came time to, third or fourth grade where you got to pick your instrument, I'm like, oh, all right, well, I don't want to learn all the fingerings that my brothers had to do. So I'll play drums. I'll pull a fast one, and didn't know that I was going to fall in love with it. And so, yeah, I started drumming as a little kid, and I wasn't terribly serious about it. And my dad got me a drum set at the end of sixth grade. And, so I bang around on it, didn't, wasn't drawn to it, didn't take it very seriously until about high school. A kid moved to town that played guitar, and I was the one kid in town with a drum set. So it was like, hey, we're coming to your house. We heard you have drums. It was that kind of thing. Like you're our only option. So started playing in bands, and went a good friend of mine dragged me out to see a band from the bigger town. I'm from a tiny town of about 1,200 people, and the next town over has about 10,000 people in it. That's where my dad taught. So the band of other high school students from there was playing, and I went to see them play, and this drummer just absolutely blew my mind. He was a year or two older than me, and was playing like everyone who I saw on MTV at the time, in the late 80s. And I just could not believe that somebody could do that, because in my mind, I'm from a small town. I had this block of like, oh, I can't do that. I could never do that. But once I saw him do it, then I was like, oh, all right, that's what I want to do. And went home, started practicing the next day, and really started taking it seriously at like 15. And so, fast forward a couple years to graduating high school, and I moved out to Hollywood about a month and a half later, with the same drummer who I'd watched that night. And so we were roommates there. We went to music school together, and he was just my absolute idol. So I looked up to him for everything he did, I did. And he was thankfully a little bit older than me and understood that I was in way over my head going from podunk town to the big city, and just terrified of leaving our apartment, and just really took me under his wing. And I would not have survived 2 months there without him.
West Hollywood can be a very scary place for people in
Yeah,
small
right.
towns.
Well, and we were right on off of Hollywood Boulevard, right by the big Chinese
Oh
theater. And
boy.
so, yeah, we lived there when the Rodney King riot started. So our whole street's on fire, 8 months after I get there. Like everything was just burning down. And I remember like being on the phone with my parents, like, no, we're fine. It's nowhere's near us. And then my mom's watching, the news, and sees the Chinese theater and everything's on fire around it. And she's like, oh my God, that's your street, right?
She watches a brick go through your window
Yeah,
on the
no,
news.
we're
Yeah.
fine. Don't worry. I was in Oakland at the time. I'm from Oakland, so
Yeah. But then, so we finally just were like, well, we got to get out of here. And we had a friend that lived down in Orange County, an hour south. And you go down there, and it was like nothing was happening.
Right.
It was a completely different world. So we went and waited it out after the first few days of, gunshots and fires, and like, oh yeah, we probably just shouldn't be here. Um, so, after I got out of music school, I met another drummer there who was a teacher of mine named Ray Luzier, and he's the drummer for Korn now. And back in the day, he was teaching at the school. He's a few years older than me, and we all just idolized Ray. And so when I got to be pals with him there, and when I was graduating, he needed a roommate. So I moved in with him for about, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. And he would start kicking down gigs because he was just, phenomenal and the busiest drummer in town. So when he was too busy for something, or it wasn't something he was interested, he was kicking it down to me, which really helped me get started, get out and playing, and start getting some experience. And after that, I started working at this, or I guess at the same time, working at this rehearsal studio, just, parking cars, scrubbing toilets, setting up the PA system, and just met tons of bands through there all the time. There was big bands, little bands, local bands, and a band called Face to Face came through there and was auditioning drummers. And so I didn't know anything about punk rock. I was raised on heavy metal. So when the gig came along and they were auditioning people, I was like, it's not for me. I don't understand that world. And a friend of mine ended up tour managing them. They borrowed a guy from another band, went and did a tour, and he calls and says, what's wrong with you? These guys are auditioning people right under your nose. And I said, I don't know punk rock. That's not my gig. And he says, well, they're looking for a rock drummer. They don't want to just do punk rock. They want to do something. They want to push the limits. So I already told them about you. You're going to audition when they come back. So they come back into town, and I didn't have any money, so I just went into their room and stole one of their live CDs out of their merch box and learned the whole thing. And so I sat for the next week watching them audition about 50 or 60 other people every day, playing the same two songs, like one kind of slow song and one really fast song. And so by the time I came in, they were pretty burned out and a little like now, they look at me and they're like, oh my God, now the kid that scrubs the toilets and parks the car is coming in. Like, geez Christ. And so I'm like, oh, all right, well, you guys got to be bored with these two songs. You want to play something else? And, their ears perk up. They're like, well, what do you know? And I'm like, well, I know your whole live record. So they just launched into a couple songs and we blazed through them and it felt really good. And I thought it was going really well. And the guitar player stops and looks at me and he's really like angry. And he's like, what is the matter with you? What's wrong with you? And I'm like, what? And he's like, you made us sit here all week going through like 60 people and you knew you were going to come in and do this. Why didn't you say something like on Monday, like this is Friday? And I'm like, I didn't set the schedule. I just parked the cars, Um,
I was
so
busy
yeah,
cleaning
that
the
really,
toilets.
yeah, exactly. I was busy, plunging. So that really started, really for me, a huge musical learning experience. Like those guys worked really hard. They wrote amazing music, and the way, I learned so much from them about how to be in the studio, how to be on tour, how to pace myself on tour. The
They
first
toured a
show I
lot.
played with them, yeah, like we toured a lot. We didn't take a lot of days off. Like it was once you're up and running, you gotta hit it. But the first show I ever played with them, we were doing like a tiny tour where we underplayed just to kind of get some of the new music out. And so it was this tiny club in Arizona, and it's, the height of summer, it's 120 degrees out, and they just crowded like 300 people into a place that held 200 and just closed the doors. And then there's like no air. It was like you had to low ceiling, you had to fight through the crowd just to get up on stage. And I come out swing. I'm like, oh my God, it's my first show. I've got to show everybody what I can do. And I just hit it too hard the first couple songs. And I was like, holy shit, I'm gonna die. There's
Pass
like
out.
25 songs in this set. I'm on song 5 and I can't see straight. But I kept going, struggling, getting blisters. I'm just like, oh my God, I can't do this. And thankfully, 5, 6 songs left in the set. One of the newer songs just had this really long build in the beginning, and I just leaned over and threw up all over the floor in the midst of playing. And then, sometimes you throw up and you get that energy burst, right? And I was like, oh, all right. So then I finished the set. I think like one person saw me, some kid in the front row was like, holy shit, that guy just threw up. Um, but it, made it through the show. And thankfully we had a travel day to get from Phoenix to Austin the next day. And, so I got to sleep on the bus and recover. But that night I was like, I don't know, I got to tell these guys, I can't do this. Like, I'm not cut out for it. I can't even stand up right now. And then, I got a good night's sleep. And after that I was fine. But I learned a really hard lesson of like, oh, you got to pace yourself. You can't swing for the fences for the whole set.
I have a question
And
about
yeah,
touring, and this kind of sidetracks, but there was a
no,
tour that Face to Face did with Midtown and Thrice, and
yes,
Thrice was like one of the opening bands. Were you on that tour?
yeah,
You were,
yep,
right? Okay, that's
yeah,
what I thought.
2002.
Yep,
Yep.
I saw you guys at the Catalyst in Santa Cruz, and it was one of the coolest
Yeah.
fucking shows I've ever been to in my entire life, dude.
Dude, that show, because that was right at the end of that tour. I remember that show because, last night on tour, there's always pranks,
Yep,
right?
and
Everyone's
there was
playing
pranks on
pranks.
stage.
Yes.
Yeah,
So our tour manager, because we played a different set list every night. We weren't one of those bands that had everything lined up and you just played it the same way every night. So it was very, very different every night. So our tour manager put 3 completely different set lists on stage. And like the first song was the same, so we start the show, and then the second song he put a different song on each of our list. So I'm counting in one song, and the other 2 guys are like expecting a different songs even from each other. And it was, you know, kind of a train wreck there for a second, but it was fun. But I loved that tour, and I love Thrice. They're still one of my favorite bands.
One of my
I
favorite
was
bands as well.
so pumped on that tour to watch them every night. Like their music is so great, and they're just good solid dudes.
And they were like
Actually,
one of the openers. They were like one of the early bands
yeah,
too.
yeah, it was kind of regional, and we did that a lot with Face to Face. I mean, we did a tour a year and a half before that one where we had Saves the Day, Alkaline Trio, and Newfound Glory all on the tour. And so it was like, well, who's going to play first every night? And it just kind of rotated by region. So it was the same thing with the Thrice tour. Like on the West Coast, they played right before us, and the Midtown played earlier, and vice versa on the East Coast. And then yeah, actually Thrice we did Warp Tour in 2003, and Riley, their drummer, got really sick. And so they came to me and they were like, "Hey, can you learn our whole set overnight?" And their music's not easy.
It's pretty
Like
hard.
it's
Yeah.
super complex, kind of math rock. And I grew up playing a lot of double bass, but it had been a while. So I learned everything overnight, and the Warp Tour had this John Lennon songwriting bus that had like electronic drums and all this stuff in it. So we went in and rehearsed to go through and pull it off, and it was actually really cool. And at the I was like, all right, I can do this for a few days, do the face-to-face set and do Thrice set. And at the last second, Dustin, the singer, was like, I don't feel right about it. He's like, you're playing great, everything sounds great. He goes, I think it's better if I just go play acoustic. And it was awesome. Like he just stripped everything down and played acoustic for a few days until Riley was back on his feet.
Oh, wow.
But it was really fun to kind of learn all those songs, but it was like staying up all night, you know, making notes and dialing things in.
They're definitely very proggy on some of their instruments for sure.
For sure, but it was so heavy and so much fun. I mean, it was a drag to only play with them on an electronic drum set,
Right.
but it was cool. And you know, that happens a lot when you're a drummer. It's like, hey, somebody went down, hop up and play. You know, get in there and keep the tour going, keep things rolling.
Yeah, they're not like bassists. Bassists are a dime a dozen. You can find one at every stop, probably. You know what I mean? That's how we roll.
Yeah, and sometimes you only have overnight. In 2007, you know, I was friends with My Chemical Romance, and their drummer got injured, and they called me up and they were like, hey, we have a month tour in Europe that, like, can you get on a plane in 2 hours, learn our whole set, and come and do the shows? And I was like, yep, okay. And then you learn making my notes on the plane, and getting up on stage in front of, they're playing arenas. So we had one rehearsal the morning I landed, took a red eye, land in New York City, have a rehearsal that day. Later that afternoon, we all get on a plane, go to Europe, go straight to the venue there, do a sound check, and then up and running. Like, and that was that.
That's
But
wild.
yeah, but you get used to it as a drummer. Like, it helps if you like the music.
Good on me. Sorry, he's
no.
my buddy's saying that there's some issues with the. I think it's just the connection on the headphones. They're still hearing you. They're still
okay, cool.
On the show. So go ahead. Sorry.
No. I'm just saying, like, as a drummer, like those kind of things come up where, no one's going to cancel the tour because the drummer can't play. I mean, I've played so many times sick, like you're throwing up all day long.
Right.
Walk up on stage and feel my knees buckle getting up on the riser, but you still play the show and then go back to throwing up as soon as you're done, right? The shows only get canceled for the singers.
Right. It's true. It's very true. As a guy who I sang in heavy metal bands, like metalcore stuff. And
nice.
You just can't do it when you're sick. I mean, it's almost impossible, you know what I mean? And singers are kind of prima donnas anyways. It's kind of written into the script, I think.
I didn't say that, but
well, drummers automatically think that because
some
drummers have the most gear to carry and singers have none, and they still don't help the drummer. It's just it's stupid.
No. This is true.
So that's such cool stuff. It's funny because I was at that show in Santa Cruz, and I was thinking about it today. I was like, I'm pretty sure he was the drummer at that time. But I was also, let's see, I think I was like 18, and I had been probably drinking pretty heavily, and I was working for Island Def Jams as like a street teamer. So I was like handing out probably Andrew WK shit or something like that. at the
Oh,
show.
right on.
Yeah. So fast forward some. Of course, you spent some time with Saves the Day after that, which is also an absolute legendary band in my book. I love them for a lot of years too. But how did the Offspring stuff come about?
Yeah, so in 2002, I was playing with Face to Face, and in 2001, I had helped again filling in for Saves the Day. Like, hey, we've got this show. Our drummer just left. It was the launch of the original Xbox, and they're like, can you, they would say, suit up. Can you learn our record? Come down and play. We'll have a rehearsal. We'll go do a show. And I was like, yeah, no problem. So we did that, but to me, it was like I never forgot it because I was like, it's really good fit. Like I like this music, I like these guys. This makes a lot of sense, and I kind of kept that in the back of my mind. And they hit me up a couple more times when they had tours, but it was always overlapping with face to face stuff. But in the fall of 2002, face to face slowed down a little bit, so I joined Saves the Day as well, and just kind of did both bands for the next 2.5 years. And then in 2007, just Saves the Day had a rough run of things, and we were struggling personality wise with each other, and it got to the point where the drama was outweighing the music for me, and I was just kind of fed up with music in general. Like and so when I quit the band, I didn't have any other prospects. Some people think, oh, he quit Saves the Day to join Offspring. I didn't have anything else going on. I just quit Saves the Day to quit Saves the Day, and I wasn't going to play music at all. I was really burned out from all of it. And my wife kind of smiles and she's like, "Yeah, just take a breather, hang back." And so I got called for a pretty big heavy metal gig, and I was like, "I'll do that. I'm tired of punk rock. I love heavy metal. I'm going to go do that." And my best friend calls me up, caught wind of it, who's guitar tech to the stars, and he knows everyone. He's like, "I heard that you're looking at that band, and I'm here to tell you you're not joining that band. Forget it. Like you just got out of crazy town. That's like crazy country. We're not going there." So I was like, okay, fine. I won't look any farther into that. Kind of let it go, and get a call for Offspring. They're like, "Hey, Offspring's looking for a drummer. Your name came up." And I was like, absolutely not. I'm not playing punk rock anymore. Didn't care and turned it down. And about a month later, get a call from a different person. They're like, "Hey, Offspring's looking for a drummer. Your name came up. And I said, "Nope, I'm not doing it. I'm not playing punk rock. I don't want it. I'm not interested." So another month goes by and I get a call from a third source. And this one was a close friend. And she was like, "Hey, I'm close with the drummer that left, and I know the guys in the band. I really think it would be a good fit. Why don't, here's their number. They want to talk to you." And at that point, my wife says, "This is weird. It's come around 3 times now. Why don't you just go down and meet with them, get the job and then decide if you want it or not?" And so I went down and met with them. And the first audition, again, it was like face to face, cattle call. There's 12 other people there. Everybody's playing the two songs, one fast song, one slow song. And so that was just playing along to the two songs for their manager. And then then I got called back. "Hey, that was great. Come back down and play those songs with the band next week." And I'm living in Northern California at the time, where my wife is from, where Saves the Day had moved to. And so I'm flying down every week to meet with them. And so I went and played the two songs the next week. I didn't think I played particularly well, but got a call back like, "Hey, the band really liked you. Can you come back next week, play these 4 songs?" Okay. And then I come back that week and I'm hearing other drummers playing the first 2 songs. So I'm like, all right, these guys they're leaving no stone unturned. They're looking at a lot of people. And one person in particular, I hear through the wall, I'm like, "Oh wow, he's shredding. Like he's nailing the mid-tempo song. Wow." And then the fast song came up and I was like, "Oh wow, this is pretty good. Like I can tell that's not his thing, but it's kind of shredding." And then the door opens and it's my old roommate, Ray Luzier, and he's laughing at me and he's like, "Dude, of course you're here." He's like, "This isn't my gig. I don't know punk rock." He's like, "I got called last night." And he's like, "I'm just checking it out." And it was just funny because at that time, I knew that Korn was looking for a drummer and I was trying to get in on that.
Of
And,
course.
so a month later, I've got the Offspring gig and he's got the Korn gig, and everyone's happy,
That's
right?
so funny.
But yeah, it's just that's the thing, you run into these people over the years. And now Ray lives 10 minutes from me here in Tennessee. So
Nice.
it's, 30 years later, we're still pals and we're still right nearby.
What a cool story.
Um, yeah, yeah. So, I get the gig with the band, and for
16 years.
yeah, almost 14 years. It
14
was
years.
great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Touring the world showing my family all these countries and everything was great till, summer of 21 and the vaccine mandates just hit me like a ton of bricks.
Sure.
And we, very quickly just kind of came to an impasse that deteriorated. I got a call from their manager that was just outrageously abusive and just unnecessarily aggressive and was just really coercive and bullying and shaming and you need to get this thing and it was made crystal clear to me that if I didn't get the vaccine I would be replaced. And I was kind of shocked and taken aback by it, tried to talk to the band about it, they backed him up. And, after that, a few days later, I found out that I was replaced from my Southwest Airlines app. My flight to rehearsal disappeared. And
Wow.
then my access to the band work calendar was revoked. And I just, all communication had been cut off. And that was that. And it was just really kind of confusing and disheartening and, deflating to be realizing you thought you were part of this thing where everyone's family and we're all in this together and you spend more time with band members some years than your own family, like you're
Right.
touring and you're traveling so much. And you know to just be kind of cast out overnight and erased was really hard to take, and not just for me but it was like my whole family. Our wives were close, our kids grew up together. My youngest daughter was born after I joined the band. Like she had known these people her whole life. And so you're explaining to your kids, like, hey, I guess we're never going to see these people again. We're not going to see those kids again. And it was a really, really difficult time for me. And so we took a month of trying to figure out, like, number one, what the hell just happened? Like it was very it felt like getting hit by a truck. And finally was just like, well, this isn't right. And, I need to say something about what happened threefold. Number one, I'm out of a job, right? I need work and I need to let people know that I'm available. And number two, they're got a tour coming up and people are calling me up and hitting me up for tickets and passes. They had a show in Nashville where I live. People that I know here hitting me up for tickets. I know that I'm not going to be at these shows. So I'm like, I don't want to have this conversation
Hard
500
times.
times
Yeah.
with people over here's what happened and here's why I'm not there. So it was like, well, let's just put this out, but also to make sure that if I'm getting leaned on here, then I know other people are getting leaned on here. I mean, I talk to people throughout the whole industry that were, coerced into this, or, some people were like, yeah, I got it. I wanted to get back to work. But some people were like, I had to get it or I was going to get fired, or I didn't get it, or I got a fake card, or, everybody was handling the situation as best as they could. And, I don't have any judgment on anybody for what they did. All I can do is speak to my own experience and how I felt about it and what I went through. But it was a really crazy time because I felt like we weren't to the point where, uh, I wouldn't be allowed in places if I was unvaccinated. We weren't there as much as people said, well, there's venues you can't get into. And I was like, well, which ones? Well, we don't
Right.
know yet.
Right.
Everything was, we don't know yet. I'm like, I know we don't know yet. So why are we forcing this issue? Why is this coming? But it was, that was it. Those were the choices. So wrote up a statement and released it and really kind of expected, certainly cancellation because of the issue, but also just expected a firing squad. And what we got was the opposite. Like all of a sudden, this wave of support started rolling in and people all around the world were like, hey, I saw your story. Thank you for speaking up. I thought I was the only person that felt this way. And I come to realize, like, oh, we were all made to feel like we were the only ones who
Right.
felt this way. Because the narrative was there's only one way to go here. There's only one right answer. Everyone has to get this thing. And that was the annoying part, is for them to say, oh, well, there's people that are vulnerable and can't take it, so we have to take it to protect them. But if you are one of those people, it didn't matter. Medical exemptions didn't matter to in any industry. They weren't accepted. It didn't matter. It was you do this or you're out. And it was just bizarre because, medicine's not a one size fits all thing, and especially not something brand new like this being rolled out all over at the same time all over the world. It just really felt crazy and freaked me out that we were all stuck in this place and nobody felt like they were allowed to say anything.
Right.
And nobody felt like you were allowed to have questions. I'm like, well, I just have questions here. And it's like, no, you can't have questions. And, whenever somebody's like, you can't question this, that's going to perk my ears up, as I'm sure for yours as well. It's like, well, what happened to individual liberty here? What happened to bodily sovereignty? We should have questions here. This is all happening really fast. And it was shocking to me how quickly, it seemed like everybody was just getting on board with it. And if you didn't get on the train, it left the station really fast, and you were left in the
Well,
dust.
and your decision specifically was something that you came to with your own personal doctor as well.
Yes. Yeah, but it didn't matter. It didn't matter, and that was another point I was trying to make is, everyone is trying to say we're such benevolent people and abundance of caution, and we've all got to get it to protect the people that can't. And you're like, oh, I'm one of those people, and it's like, nope, fuck you too. You got to get it too. Like you don't count.
Mhm.
You're not you. We meant other people that can't get it. So it was so disingenuous all across the board, and none of it made any sense. And then the goalposts were getting dragged all over the field. It was, oh, you just got to get this one dose of this one or get two doses of this one and they're done. And then it's like, oh, well, wait, now there's a booster. Oh, well, now there's a new one. Well, now every 3 months or every 6 months or maybe once a year. Like it's just never ending. And for those of us that said, hey, you can look right here. The little bit of data that was released early on says they didn't test for transmission, but they were hopeful that it would, provide some protection. But that's not what they said on TV. And that's not what they said anywhere else. But where they had to put it in writing, they did. But they could say whatever they want on television. So everyone is inundated with this thing that's safe and effective, and it's our only way out. And everyone's got to get it. And the people that don't are the absolute worst people on the planet. And you don't want to be one of those, right? Don't be one of the bad people.
Right.
And so whenever there was anyone, I mean, even in my experience, when you say I'm not going to get this, you are not just kicked into the bad person club, you are branded all of these things that, I don't have a problem with, but they didn't apply to me. They weren't accurate. I'm not a terribly conservative person. I'd considered myself a classical liberal. I voted for Bernie Sanders the last election because I couldn't stomach Biden or Trump. But here I am branded a far right MAGA conspiracy theorist person. But I'm not out there telling anyone what to do. I'm just saying, hey, this is for me, this isn't right. For me with my medical history, this isn't right. And beyond that, no is a complete sentence, and nobody should have to take this if they don't want to. The inserts that they put in with the vaccines at the pharmacist are blank. If you were to ask them, oh, well, what's the side effect profile? They can't even provide you informed consent for this because they don't have the information.
Right.
So it was just none of it made any sense to me. And the more that it went on and the more we started hearing from people, it was just really this wave of support from around the world of, a lot of people from big bands, a lot of, I'm friends with a lot of people now that I didn't know before that are like, hey, I back what you did. I feel the same way. And I just feel like there's so many more people who are not on board with this, but nobody wanted it to cost them anything.
Right.
And it's like, well, if we all just say, I don't want it to cost me anything, we're going to be stuck in this forever. So I'm grateful for the people with way much larger platforms than me. I mean, I'm a little tiny pea in the sea, but you got Djokovic of the tennis world and Aaron Rodgers in the NFL and Kyrie Irving in the NBA, like people standing up and going, hey, this doesn't feel right for me and my body. I don't want to do this. I'm not going to. And, all vilified, all painted with the terrible person brush. But that's the thing about cancel culture is it's scary and you're terrified of it. And then it comes really fast and it burns really hot. But we got to remember that outrage culture never sleeps. And every day, these people wake up going, who are we mad at today? Who are we going to hate today? So, while I was getting torched, it it burned through and people moved on. Like I didn't expect it to be a big story. I was honestly just trying to let people know I need a gig. I'm not going to be at these shows. Please don't ask me for tickets. And this shouldn't be happening.
Right.
You know, regardless of my medical condition, I support anybody saying no to this for any reason because it should be about informed consent, and we don't have it.
Yeah,
So
I've been extremely lucky to have this show. I will say, because I had Andrew Bogut on the show, who was with the Warriors when they won the final the championship,
oh
and
wow.
and he stood up in Australia, which was extremely hard to do.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he's an
Jeez.
Australian basketball star who stood up in Australia against the lockdowns and the COVID mandates and stuff like that. But I've also had some other great people, some actors. I had Pellegrino on, who played Satan on Supernatural and was in Lost, and he was standing up against it. And so I've been very lucky to see some of the bigger names that stood up to it like come on my show and talk about it. But I will say that in the beginning, when this was all starting and I hadn't had some of those names on the show, I felt very alone for a long time. And I've traveled nationally. I've done 48 states speaking tours for the Libertarian Party and this and that and this and that. And I felt alone, and I know people here in Iowa that felt alone, and so it is such a good thing to have people to use their platforms, however big they may be, to say.
Well, it was
things.
incredible. I mean, that saved me as a person, saved my life. Like I was distraught because it's, you go through a career death and an identity death. Like if I'm not in this band, or I'm not the drummer for this thing, or I'm not allowed to drum anywhere
am I?
anymore, like I don't have any other skills. Who the hell am I? And it was a real like identity crisis, and I was a mess for a couple months. Like my wife and my daughters got me through that. Like they were my rock, my support system. One of them had eyes on me at all times.
Sure.
Like it was sketchy. I didn't know what to do, and slowly pulled out of it. But a lot of what helped me outside of their love and support was these messages that kept coming in through Instagram, through Twitter, through my website, of people like, I saw your story, here's my story, here's what I went through, and everybody sharing the same thing and building a community of people where we all thought that we were alone. We all thought that we were the only people that felt like this, and we all thought that there was nobody out there speaking for us. And I think the more that people speak up in these situations, it gives everybody else permission to say something. And as much as I don't like having to wait for permission for anything, I think we all have our individual rights. This kind of thing is contagious, and it spirals. And so the amount of people that I've met through this that have like lifted up myself and my family through our darkest time was incredible. And the downside of it is the amount of people who I thought we were close with and I thought cared about us that dipped out of our lives real fast.
Sure.
Was devastating, because it's like we are at our lowest point here, and you are distancing yourselves from us to not get any cancel on you. And that was hard to stomach. But again, I've got compassion for everybody in this situation, because we are just inundated with fear from the beginning. Don't leave your house, don't turn off the news, the ticker's running over here with the death count and the case count, and it's just fear. Like everybody was afraid, everybody was worked up. And when you're that afraid, there's no critical thinking. It shuts it all down. You
Right.
can't, you were told not to ask questions. We can't ask questions. It's warp speed. We're flying through this. This is our only way out. Don't look over there at those other things that these people say are working. It was crazy to live through. So I understand why people were scared, and I understand why other people made whatever choices that they made. But it was hard for us as a family to lose that many people, and to kind of feel a little bit alone in it at first. But we banded together. They got me through it, and eventually got back on the drums, got back recording music. I have my own studio here. That's where I'm sitting now, where I track drums for people. And got a really great message from Tim Pool. Reached out. He picked up my story very early on. And I kept hearing like, hey, this guy Tim Pool's talking about you. I'm like, okay, I don't know what this is. And because I'm just out of the loop, right? And so I start watching his show, and I'm like, oh, okay, wow, this is actually really cool. And then somebody else is like, hey, he just talked about you on Joe Rogan. And it's like, oh wow, well, that's crazy.
Biggest podcast in the
So
world.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that blew my mind. And so I sent him a message. I was like, hey, thanks for the support. And he's like, for sure. You want to come out and be on the show? And Absolutely not. Like I'm a puddle of a person, and he's like, that's great. Why don't you come out and hang out anyway? He's like, I love music. Let's talk about music. And so I just went and hung out with him for a few days. And he started playing me these songs. And I was like, oh shit, you're a good songwriter. Like, oh, you can play guitar. And so we've just been started recording music together. So he and his music supervisor Carter, they'll send me songs here, and I'll track up the drums and send them
Oh,
back.
that's
And
pretty
so
cool.
yeah. So last August we put out our first single together, made a video and stuff, and like within 24 hours the video got 1 million views, and the song made it all the way up to #2 on iTunes sales. Like the little band that could out of nowhere, because he's got a massive audience, right? So everybody was like, yeah, we're going to support this, these guys working outside of the system. And we had a publicist that went out with the story the next week, like, look at this band out of nowhere, #2 on iTunes. And it was just met with like a flamethrowers and a firing squad of mainstream press. Were like, fuck those guys. They don't deserve this. They don't belong here. They're doing it wrong. And it was just gatekeeper nonsense. Was like, if any other band popped up out of nowhere and got right behind Britney and Elton's duet for iTunes sales,
oh shit,
that would be a story, right? But no, it was like, no, you can't do that. So
well, I don't know how you feel about hip hop, but Tom McDonald, if you're familiar with Tom McDonald,
yeah,
same shit. It's the same shit. The guy is at the top of everything, and they're constantly saying worst rapper ever. He'll never make it. It's like the dude's completely independent. Completely.
Yeah, it's just hit pieces because they don't want anybody else showing people that you don't need the gatekeepers. Because if we realize we don't need them, then what are they there for?
Wait a minute, you could become a big artist without a label, without distribution and all. How do you do it?
How about that? Yeah. I mean, everybody can make their own record on their phone now. When I was a kid, if someone had a 4-track cassette recorder within 100 miles of you, that was a recording studio.
It's funny you bring that up, because this show, my first 4 episodes, I recorded my podcast on my phone.
Yeah.
Along that same line, occasionally YouTube will recommend me random songs from nobodies that have like 4 views, and they're all complete and utter disasters, and I love them.
Yeah, it does happen from time to time.
Yeah, somebody was telling me last week that there's something outrageous, like 100,000 songs a day just get uploaded into the world. Yeah, like so many people are making music, and it's so it's obviously it's great that there's room for everybody to do it, and the gatekeepers matter less and less and less, but it's a lot of noise to sift through to find the good stuff, or to find what you enjoy. Not that everything doesn't have value, but it seems like there's opportunity, and it's also a little bit harder to find because you got to look pretty deep.
I'm famously argumentative on Twitter. It's
really
just who I am. I can't help it. Twitter's a war zone. It was built to be a war zone. I mean, the whole platform was just made to be a war zone. So I use it for what it's for. But there'll be several times a month where I'll be arguing back and forth, political, whatever it is, back and forth with somebody, and they'll have a Spotify link on their header, their bio, and I'll go and click on it, and I'll start listening. I'll be, damn it, they're good. Fuck. I want to hate this person. I can't hate them now. They play good music. It's true. And there's even people that I have disliked entirely on Twitter that now I listen to their music on a regular basis because it's just readily available and it's really, really good. But your situation in general, I mean, you're specifically, I've watched a lot of this gatekeeping stuff happen in all industries because of this crazy COVID regime, but your situation specifically, and other musicians as well, really broke my heart, because especially in the punk rock scene, right? Like I grew up with this individualist, autonomy punk rock scene that was like, we are not going to listen to authority. We're going to do what we want to do. We're going to allow this because you're cool and you're different and you want to be that. And then all of a sudden it was like, this happened in 2020, and it was like hive mind across the entire genre. And it just blew my fucking mind, because I'm like, I'm like, man, this is the shit that made me who I am today, right? Like I'm a obviously a contrarian, but I'm also a libertarian, and I know that some, that term has some connotations with certain people here and there. But what that means to me is that, I'm free to live my life the way I want to live it, as long as I'm not hurting anybody else. It's always been the very basic core tenets of libertarianism to me, right? And so when I see this punk rock genre that's like, yeah, fuck authority, we do what we want, that has written hundreds and thousands of songs about it, and has venues that are like, yeah, we're not going to listen to authority, we're going to let the cops come, but we're going to bar them and not let them come in, and you know what I mean? All of a sudden now they're like, okay, you can't come to Gilman Street in Berkeley anymore unless you have a vaccine passport. What the fuck is that?
Yeah, no, it was, I think, I mean, you label it as heartbreaking, and I agree. Like that's the best term I could use, because you're watching all of these bands and all this whole scene of just everybody, you know, feigning this benevolent, we care about everybody's health, but everybody was out of work for a year and a half. People just wanted to get back to work.
Right.
Like, so it was, and I think that was the hard part for the industry is, okay, we just told everyone to be completely terrified for the last year and a half. Now we would like them to come give us money and clap for us again. How do we unring that bell? And so then it's like, oh, well, vaccine cards, everyone show your card and now we're all safe. And which was preposterous. And, so, but that was the best they could do. So the mandates came down from, the top of the industry, filtered through everything, through the promoters, down to the managers, or the tour managers of the band, leaning on the crews and leaning on audiences. But the interesting thing about the audiences is most venues, like, nobody wanted to be the reason that a show got canceled. Promoter didn't want a reason. They're like, just show us some paperwork. We don't care, but we need to say that we covered our ass. You guys want to say you covered your ass. We don't want to cancel the show. So they left it up to the artists whether they wanted to insist on vaccine cards for the audience to get it or not. And I would say most of the people I heard of did not push that, because you don't want to lose money. You don't want to leave people out, because it wasn't about that. It wasn't about protecting anybody's health. It was about performing goodness and protecting profits and getting the money machine rolling again. I look at these, festivals are back in full swing now, and you see like the punk rock festivals going up and stuff, and you see the lists of bands playing, and I'm just kind of smiling, like thinking about their set lists of all these different groups and going, oh, are they going to play that song about, fuck authority? Or are they going to do, this,
dropping the Pennywise name drops
yeah,
there? Yeah.
No, I'm not calling out anyone in particular.
I'm just kidding.
Please don't sick Fletcher on me.
Or Zoli, or Zoltan, either one.
Yeah, but it's just like, are we all just going to go back to shaking our fist at the man and acting like the last couple of years didn't happen? Or, has there been any self-reflection here? And I couldn't tell you. My situation a month after I was replaced, my former band is out playing festivals, and I'm getting messages from other bands on the bill going, this is so stupid. Like, none of us have the vaccine. Nobody asked us for our card. Nobody asked us for shit. We're playing on the same stage as your band. Why are you not here? This doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, I know it doesn't make any sense. There's nothing I can do about it.
Has there been any
in the position of power?
Has there been any communication between you and the other members of the band about any of this?
Nope.
Not a word.
Nope. Nope. And I don't expect there will be. I mean, my thing is, we had a lot of great years together. Like, as far as I'm concerned, everything was fine up until, we hit that wall, and then it deteriorated really fast. So I'm super disappointed with how things ended. But again, I've got compassion for everybody in this situation. People wanted to get back to work. I understand that. But to me, it just seemed like there could have been and should have been more of a conversation, and there just wasn't. It was just we're all family until you say no to something, and then you're out. So, but I don't have any expectations, and I don't give it a lot of thought, because for me, I've just kind of wanted to move on to new things and find new ways to work and be creative and find my way back to loving music again. And so my door is always open if anybody wants to come back and talk about anything or clear anything up, or God forbid, have any kind of atonement for the way people acted. But I don't have any expectations of that. And I'm certainly not holding my breath or hanging my hat on it.
You don't seem like the most unforgiving gentleman that I've ever met. That's for sure.
I again, like, everybody was in an impossible situation. I get it. I don't agree with the way that everyone dealt with it, but all I can do is worry about myself and my family and navigate my own experience. Everything else is out of my hands.
Sure.
So
I will say, this whole ordeal with bands has opened my eyes, and I've started enjoying bands that I never enjoyed before and never would have enjoyed if it hadn't have been for COVID. That's the silver lining. The great Canadian Aviel Oppenheim, who we had on the show last week, he wrote a great book about the ethics of vaccine passports in Canada.
Oh, wow.
He said, I was so relieved to hear Skillet and Three Doors Down speak out against the vaccine passports. And it's so funny because I was never a fan of Skillet. It wasn't my band.
I like Skillet.
It wasn't a band that I cared for at all. And I'm Christian, you know, I'm a religious person, and I do listen to some, but a lot of the Christian bands I listen to are like August Burns Red and like heavy shit.
Weren't you making fun of me like 2 weeks ago for listening to Christian rap?
No, certain rappers. But anyway, so I actually paid for Skillet's new album, and I took all of my kids to the Winter Jam, the big Christian music festival, to see Skillet last year because they were so adamant about this is all bullshit and you guys need to stand up and not let them, you know, push this on everybody. And now I'm a fan.
Dude, Skillet's cool. I played some festivals with them years ago, and they've got the hydraulic lifts.
Oh yeah, the crazy show.
But their drummer, she's phenomenal, and she's shredding and singing like that at the same time. I was just like, oh my God, I don't even know what to do. I wasn't familiar with their music at all, but I watched their whole set both times we played with them.
They put on a really good show, and they're older guys. I mean, they're pretty older too. I think I want to say their lead singer is like 50. I mean,
well, they were big when I was growing up.
Yeah, they were my wife's
song.
My wife is like one of their biggest fans, and she's been watching them since she was like 14, and she's 30 now. So they had to be around for a while. But I didn't know. I had only knew the song Monster, and it was only because it was on the radio. And you know, there was a long time in my life where I was like, oh, I don't listen to radio rock. You know what I mean? I don't do that stuff. I'm not one of those guys. You know, I'm a hardcore kid. I listen to hardcore music and punk rock, and I think as you get into your late 30s, you're kind of like, I just don't give a shit anymore. And now I listen to like fucking country music and like all kinds of shit. Like I listen to everything, dude. Hey, I heard the lead singer of Stain put out a country album. I was like, I'm gonna go listen to it. You know, I can't not listen to it, dude. You know, and now they're putting out a new Stained album. They're putting out a whole new album of Stain. That's kind of crazy.
That's cool.
Yeah,
it's been a while.
Nice. That was.
Thank you. I'll show myself out.
That was boss. That was so good.
We did have a super chat from Guy Squiggs for $5. Thank you, Guy. He said he started a new band called Dennis because every member is named Dennis, and we are all Dennis.
Oh, geez, dude. I don't know if you know the folklore of Dennis on Twitter, and it's probably better not to explain it to you right
now.
Okay. So I mean, what's next for you, man? What are you gonna do? I mean, this has got to been one of the craziest things to ever happen in your life. I mean, you're in this big successful band that everybody in the world knows about. They've been listening to for fucking decades. You toured all over the world. You're getting to see all these countries, and then it just stops because of a fucking illness that they've decided to criminalize, basically. And you have to start all over. I mean, what is your new path, man?
So, I mean, I've been working on a lot of stuff since all of this happened. Like I track drums all the time here at my home studio for people all around the world, which is great. Hit me up at my website, peteparada.com. Let's make some music. But, and you know, so me and Tim Pool are still working on his record. I think we've done 11 or 12 songs now. 3 of them have been released so far. And that's just really fun. Like I really enjoy the music and working with those guys. So that's super cool. And then my newest project that I've been working on for the last year is called The Defiant. I'm wearing the shirt here, if I can lean the right way. And a project came to be about a year ago when I got a phone call from Dickie Barrett from the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, and their singer, and he had gone through a similar thing as me with his band and with the Jimmy Kimmel show. He was Jimmy Kimmel's announcer from the very beginning.
I had no idea.
Yeah. Almost 20 years there. And, you know, same kind of thing, not going to get the vaccine. And, you know, while I had certainly had people leaning on me to get it, he had the whole weight of ABC and Disney breathing down his neck, and, you know, took his stand. got let go from his gig there too, and was in a similar place of me of like, all right, I've got to find a new way to move forward. This is what I do, and let's find the right people to do it with. So he saw my story, called me up, and said, hey, I think we should work together. I have a good feeling about this. Do you know Greg Camp from Smash Mouth? And I'm like, well, obviously I know who he is, but I've never met him. And he said, well, he lives in Nashville too. And he said, so why don't the three of us start writing and let's see what happens? And, very quickly added Johnny Rio from the Street Dogs on bass
Oh, nice.
and Joey LaRocca from the Briggs in LA on guitar and another vocal. And we just started writing this music that was super fun and re-energized me into why I got into playing music in the first place. And I realized, my wife pointed out to me, she's like, this is the first time that you've been in at the beginning of a band, in forever. And I was like, oh, you're right. Because a lot of times as the drummer, you're getting brought in after a band starts taking off. The first thing they do is replace their drummer, right? Which sucks. But it's just a reality of the business. And that's, I'd replaced Face to Face's drummer, replaced Saves the Day's drummer, replaced Offspring's drummer. Like, you come through, but you're never usually there on the ground floor. So for me, it was exciting to be like, oh, I'm writing all these songs. I'm writing all these drum parts. I'm here for every song of this band. And so we started just mail order, passing demos back and forth. Like, we'd bang a song arrangement together. They'd send it to me. I would add drums to it, send it back to Greg. He'd put guitars on it, send it to Johnny, put bass on it. And then Dickie came here in October, and did all the vocals here at my studio. And so this project just started forming and coming together, and it was feeling really good. And it excited me again to be not just fall in love with the drums, because I got to work on everything here at my own studio at my own pace and really just hit record and see what happened. And a lot of like spontaneous first takes and first ideas were captured that I thought were just going to be demos. And the farther we got into it, we started playing it for people, and they're like, what do you mean this is a demo? This sounds like the record. And so we ended up keeping all the drums, because I'm like, yeah, if we go redo them at another studio, I'm just going to play the same thing, but more self-conscious.
Right.
And it's going to lose the real human spontaneous feel that it has. Like, it's such an uplifting album. I'm so excited for people to hear it, because it's a really positive message. Like, the idea of the band is to bring people together. Like, everyone feels like there's too much division out there in the world, and we're just trying to write songs about, yes, what's happening in the world, but not from a doom and gloom negative kind of way. It's more of a, what do we do about this? How do we come together? How do we find common ground? And it's just kind of reinvigorated my love for music, playing with these guys. Everyone came here a week and a half ago. So all five of us were in one place for the first time after working together for a year. And we had rehearsals and shot a video for the first song that'll be out next month. And it was so exciting to just sit with people that I enjoy their music and their camaraderie and their company, and just everyone's working towards a common goal and everybody's excited to be there. It was really, really special. And, a friend of mine came and she was taking photographs at the rehearsal and stuff. And she said, she's like, I can feel something special is going on here. I can't believe you guys have never played together before. Like, you sound like a well-oiled machine. Because it's, we've been working on these songs for so long. It was so fun to just get in there and really swing and play. And I hadn't played that heavy in a while, because I'm doing a lot of studio recording. And so it was really nice to just kind of open up, get some blisters, start smacking myself in the back with the sticks again. Like, oh, I'm swinging, breaking cymbals. Like, all right, this is fun, because it's been a bit, it's been a bit.
That's a veteran lineup too. Like, all
Right?
those names. I know my 27-year-old co-host probably doesn't understand who all those people are, but that's like,
I know some of
fucking
them, which
legends.
is impressive for how ignorant I am of rock music in general.
Yeah, it's exciting. So,
Well, I mean, I think one of my other favorite shows I ever went to was Dropkick Murphys and was it the Briggs? No, Street Dogs.
yeah,
Street Dogs, and it was at like Soma in San Diego or something like that. It was wild, dude. But
yeah.
man, what a cool! I'm excited. I didn't know about the Define. I'm actually very excited to listen to that. And you guys got Spotify and all that stuff set up already, or?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have the first song comes out mid-June. They're editing the video right now, and then, the album hopefully be out later this year. We're still, putting the pieces together of timelines and release and trying to set up shows and stuff.
Well,
But
I would love to help promote whatever you guys need from me, man. Especially guys that are, that were willing to stand up to fucking Jimmy Kimmel, dude.
yeah, right.
Like of all
Yeah.
the people, hey, could you imagine like watching this shit going on and going, oh fuck, I work for Jimmy Kimmel. There's no way out of this, dude. That's it. I mean, ABC
Yeah,
and Jimmy Kimmel, dude, we're done.
Could you imagine
Yeah.
being threatened by Jimmy Kimmel?
Oh yeah, it's
Like, how could you keep a straight face? He's like threatening you, and you're like, you're just this manlet.
I can
like-
only imagine how he felt, man.
Yeah, it had to be really, really hard. And and all of those late night hosts, though, like everybody got on board with it. Everybody pushed the narrative, and everybody's most likely getting paid to keep shilling this stuff. And
Mhm.
what really was hard to take was how othering it was for people who were unvaccinated, who weren't going to take this vaccine or were waiting for more information. Somebody like me looking at the trials and going, well, they only put healthy people in the trial. They don't have anybody with any medical problems at all. So, or anybody that's had a history of bad reactions to these things, you're going to want to sit back and wait for more data to come in. And for, Stephen Colbert to have a whole chorus line of people dressed in syringes and everyone, it was just everywhere you looked. It was like, oh, this is going to save us. It's amazing. It's the best thing ever. Oh, you got to get one. Oh, you don't want one? What's wrong with you? Oh my God. Are you MAGA? Are you crazy? Are you a lunatic? Do you hate grandma? Oh, well, what do you want? Do you want a cheeseburger? You want a lottery ticket? You want a lap dance? Like
Free donuts?
Yeah. It was like, what do you mean you're like, you don't care about anybody's health if you're saying, go get this shot here, have a pile of sugar.
Right. Well, it's so
I'll
funny
take the lap dance though.
Right, we know you will, buddy. No, but it's so funny. It's so funny to me because the punk. I mean, the music industry in general was so anti big pharma all my life, my life. And I talked a lot about this on the last show, so I won't go so deep into it and get all fucking weird about it again. But as somebody who worked in healthcare for a long time, I can tell you that the doctors, they don't know what the fuck is in these drugs. They don't give a shit about what's in these drugs. What they get is a rep that shows up and says, this is the drug we're using to treat this today. And it goes into their Rolodex of drugs that they use to treat symptoms. And then somebody comes in and exhibits these symptoms and they say, okay, this is what we're going to give you. But they don't know what the fuck it does. They don't know anything about it. They don't care about it.
Mhm.
And the worst part about that is those same reps from those same companies are lobbying the government. So the government's pushing their narrative. They're paying the media companies to sponsor.
all the
Jimmy
ads are
Kimmel, sponsored by
sponsored by
Pfizer, Moderna, and
there
Johnson
was
and Johnson.
whole
Wait, no, we
fucking
can't do
music
Johnson and Johnson anymore.
There was whole fucking music festivals sponsored by Pfizer, dude. I was just like, you gotta be kidding me. I'm not going to any music festival that's sponsored by Pfizer for the rest of my life ever again.
But then you find out, like, there's the pharma playbook. Did you guys see the series Dope Sick with Michael Keaton about the opioid crisis?
I have not, no.
No.
So it came out, I guess, 2 years ago now. It was mind blowing because you're watching, I think it took place in the early to mid 90s. They're rolling these opioids out, and it's all about what you just said. The pharma reps going out there, no medical degree, but they're just salespeople, and they're telling the doctors, we tell them what to prescribe, and here's how much bonus we get for how many prescriptions they write, and what we can offer to the doctors for writing the prescriptions. But they got to a point in the series where the patients are taking the opioids and it's not enough, and they keep saying, hey, I'm still having pain, I'm having pain. And my wife and I are both like, our faces almost melted. The pharma rep in there says, oh, well, tell them it's breakthrough pain. Tell them that they're having breakthrough pain. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me?
Wow.
Like, they were pushing the breakthrough pain 20 years ago, and now, oh, you got the vaccine, but you still caught COVID. Oh, that's a breakthrough case,
infection.
breakthrough infection. And then it's like, no, everybody's getting an infection. But it's, they keep trying to sell it. Oh, well, that's okay. That means it's working. That means, it's just a breakthrough. It's very rare. Sorry, you're one of the rare ones. Oh, everyone's getting it. Well, hold on. Let me grab the goalposts and move them over a little farther. Now we never said it would stop transmission, but it'll keep you out of the hospital. Oh shit, you're all going to the hospital. Well, we meant, you would probably not die. Like, just dragging the goalposts everywhere.
You would have died worse. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
It would have been
Yeah.
a lot worse if I didn't have, the 2 initial shots and the 4 boosters. I'm
Yeah.
bedridden for 10 days now, and I can barely
Yeah.
keep anything down, but thank God I got the jab.
Well, and I'll say this: it was the first time in my life where I heard people who used to be anti big pharma and anti authority in general say, "No, it's cool. It's FDA approved." And what you're talking about here is hilarious because you guess who approved all the biggest pain management opiates in the world, all the ones that are killing hundreds of thousands of people a year, or whatever. It was the FDA. They're the ones that approved that. So you can't tell me that something's safe just because the FDA approves it. And let's be honest, it wasn't even approved.
What is it? A third of all drugs that get approved within 10 years end up getting recalled.
Yep.
Right. So it's safe until all of a sudden they can't, they force that narrative anymore, and then it's yanked, and then we don't speak of that anymore. And the bad thing. But that was a tough thing for me to deal with people. Is like, well, if you're railing against opioids, but you're loving the vaccine, it's the same people. So you're over here, you're angry about opioids, but you're loving vaccine. It's not like all the bad people work down this hallway making opioids, but all the good people are making the vaccines over here. It's the same people.
Exactly.
It's the same stuff. So if you're mad at big pharma, be mad at big pharma, but don't just say, well, this time they got it right. This time they care. It's like Lucy in the football. Like, they're going to yank
way less studies about this stuff than there are about opiates. I'll tell you that much for sure.
Absolutely.
And I will say this again. I reiterate this. I probably said this on 100 of these shows, but the term "follow the money" is not a fucking conspiracy theory. It's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
It's fact based entirely.
My old podcast was fantasy football, and we used that same concept: follow the money. If you wanted to know who was gonna produce in an offense, you looked at who the team was paying.
Right. You follow the money.
You follow the money. You use that everywhere.
That's a basic common knowledge thing. I mean, if a big corporate, you can't, this is what gets me with the people on the left, especially. Now, I'm accused all the time of being the far right, crazy extremist, Pete. I'm sorry that you had to come on my show and deal with me.
Oh, no, I've been called that too.
And I am, in a lot of respects, I would consider myself very, very right, especially when it comes to my own family and my own life. But, my friends on the left, this is what really, really bugged me out was, them calling this stuff conspiracy, and it's like this is a basic fact. Like you've railed against corporations the entire time I've known you, and now this corporation, this mega corporation with the world's biggest medical fine in history or criminal fine in history. Now they're okay. Now they're good. Yeah. Now they're benevolent, and there's nothing wrong with them. And they want you to stick something in a needle and put it in your body, and you're okay with that all of a sudden? How?
And it's wild. I've watched doctors get disenfranchised about the whole medical system because of this. Like my mother was an ER doctor for 20-something years, and she doesn't trust the medical industry anymore. One of her best friends was my pediatrician, and she's having questions as well.
I don't know how a healthcare professional learning the things that they've learned in med school and beyond, right? Because you keep learning, you continue your education, and healthcare is ever changing, right? I don't know how anybody could watch what happened over the last 3 years working in healthcare and say, you know what, they're right. They have to be questioning. They have to be skeptical, and there was a lot of them that are. But there's a lot of really, and I say this a lot too, there's a lot of really dumb fucking doctors, dude, like very, very dumb. And I know that people are like, well, Josh, how can you say that? They had to go to 10 years of college.
They're smart.
It doesn't mean shit. It doesn't mean anything.
They're smart, but not like wise or intelligent.
They're very, very smart when it comes to what the textbooks tell them, what the pharma reps tell them, what the symptoms that need to be treated tell them. But when it comes to, hey, maybe the board doesn't have the patient's best interest in mind, they don't care. And that makes them dumb. That makes them really fucking dumb, in my book. I don't know.
Well, and a lot of them, like, you get threatened, hey, don't look behind that curtain. Don't poke around here. You don't want to lose your funding. I mean, pharma funds 60 to 70% of the FDA regulations are funded by pharma. So, and it doesn't make any sense. And then when their studies are peer reviewed, they're not reviewing the data because nobody gets to look at the data. They are reviewing the pharma company's own analysis of their own data.
Right.
Like it's crazy that
Mhm.
that's how our medical system works, and people are running around going, trust the science, and oh my God, you're crazy. I mean, I was told that my views were extreme and that I needed to check in on some more mainstream views, and it was just kind of like, I'm looking at everything here and it's not good,
Your
and
view
you're
should be
only
the
like,
norm.
yeah, I'm like, but you're telling me from someone who only watches the mainstream news that I'm wrong and I need to watch more of your stuff, but you're not going to look into anything that I've said. Like these were real conversations I had with people, and
Mm.
it was just, I felt like it was a mantra wandering around going, make it make sense. Like none of this makes sense. But we're
Science is all questioning. I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah.
well, the
Science,
science was settled, but now the science evolved.
yeah, it keeps
So
Mhm.
evolving too, and it's gonna keep
mhm.
evolving
The
until the
science
money
is a
runs
living
out.
document.
Yeah, the science will continue to evolve until the money runs out. It's kind of, you know,
Yeah.
that more the beatings will continue until morale improves. It's
Morale
it's the
improves, yeah,
same
but
thing,
that
man.
was the thing. A year ago, it was like, "Fuck you, the science is settled, there's no more discussion," and now it's like, "Hey, all those things you said turned out to be wrong." Well, the science evolved.
Yeah, totally.
Well, yeah, so I can't take any of it seriously, and it's, still people come at me online, wanna have arguments about this and stuff, and it's like, I'll try to have a nice, rational discussion, but, when it deteriorates, I just have to bow out because, I try not to block anybody because 'cause I'm a free speech person. I'm like, all everything stems from our right to free speech. So you're entitled to show up on my page and offend me, if that's what you wanna do, but you're not entitled to a response. You're not entitled to my time, and you're not entitled to me getting in the mud with you. I won't do it.
Right.
But it's mind-blowing the mindset that people are stuck in, even confronted with all the evidence we know now. Even Fauci is like, "Oh, yeah, these vaccines didn't do what we thought. Anyway, next time it'll be better." But people are still like, "No, it was perfect, and that's the only reason we got out of this." And
As soon as I
I
saw
just
Fauci, okay, because I was living in California, you know, through the 80s and 90s, okay, and I know, listen, any one of us could have at any time went and watched Dallas Buyers Club and understood as soon as you saw Fauci, you should have ran the other way.
yeah.
The guy
Do they
literally,
cover him in that movie?
no, not by name, but
But
a lot of the reason why people had to go down and run life-saving therapeutics across the border from
yeah,
Mexico was because of his pushing AZT on people that was
AZT,
actually
yeah.
killing HIV patients. And they
Yeah.
found out that, you know, probably hundreds of thousands, or not that many back then, but thousands of people died because of him pushing AZT, which they come to find out later he has shares in and all this shit.
Yeah.
And then I see head of the COVID task force, you know, and I'm like, oh no, dude, no. And it blew my mind. And you know, you have the mindset of like the punk rock and the metal kids that I grew up with. You know what I mean? It was like that. Okay, questions are important and we need to question authority at all times. Maybe sometimes they're right. Maybe. But we should always be questioning these things because, you know, they don't have a great track record through history. And I wish more people would have kept that same mindset, you know, through 2020 and 2021, but it folded so many good people, dude.
I know. I kind of developed that mindset during 2020 and 2021.
Well, I was not anti-vaccine at all before 2021.
Yeah.
I was like as pro-vax as they possibly come, and now I'm like, I'm not even vaccinating my kids anymore. Like I'm done. We're done, dude. Like done.
Well, they've created such a distrust of the entire system now, and I think across. I mean, you know, a lot of messages that I've gotten over the last 4 to 6 months have now been people going, "Hey, I've been following your story, and I was kind of crappy about it at the beginning, but I'm having a lot of questions now, and I'm not feeling so good about this, and I don't have a lot of trust in the system because it just looks like we all got lied to." Like, there's a lot of that kind of waking up going on, and I think they really whatever they were trying to accomplish here, they sort of did the opposite, and the trust in our medical system is just gotta be cratering.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, honestly, if you got to think about some silver linings over the last 3 years, the fact that more people are starting to look into holistic medicine, I think, is really
Yeah.
important. The trust in the corporate news media has got to be in an all-time low. When
Absolutely,
Joe
yeah.
Rogan is doing quadruple the daily listeners that Fox and CNN are doing, like you
Yep.
know that people are just
And-
fucking done.
Fox screwed themselves.
Oh, getting rid of Tucker was the worst
Yeah.
thing Fox could have ever done for themselves. It was the only guy that anybody really tuned into Fox to listen to anymore, and that's over. And now he's independent media on Twitter.
And in
Fucking
like
crazy.
20 years, the entire corporate news media,
they're done.
fan base will die off.
It's dead. It's, in my opinion, when you're only doing 1.2 million views per day as a corporate news media, that's owned by one of the 3 big corporations, you're done. You're fucking. And they gotta be shitting themselves. And they did it to themselves. They really did.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they had a good thing going. I mean, where else do you have? You call yourself a news organization, but you're recycling the same stories every 60 minutes, but putting a different actor in there to give their slant on it all day long. And that's all these people are. They're all actors. They're not news people. They're reading dictation of what's been handed to them. Here's your story. Like Jake Tapper didn't go out and find a story and hunt it down. He's just reading what was put in front of him. Same as all these people. And I think more people are waking up to that of like, oh my God, this is the same shit they were talking about the last hour. And I've seen this commercial for diabetes medication every 20 minutes all day long. Like, why is this medication? This commercial doesn't even tell me what it does. It just says, ask your doctor if abalabala is right for you. Like that's crazy. And if you go ask your doctor, they're going to go, absolutely, that's right for you. And here's your prescription. Go try it out.
They're getting really weird on the fucking names for drugs these days. What's the Skyrivia? Have you heard of this new drug?
No.
I think it's a diabetes medication, but it's
Yeah.
I think it's Skyrivia. I saw my wife's in the chat. If she can remember, we were laughing about the name. I was like, what a weird fucking name for a drug now.
Does it turn you into a Nord?
I don't know, but when you run out of, when you run through, 100 million different drugs, I mean, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
You gotta start
It's like band names. You're running out. You know what I'm saying?
No, it's
we got so many drugs, we're out of names.
You can always come up with a verb the noun band anytime you want. Anytime you want.
True.
Yeah, just a name generator. That's what Post Malone did.
Verb the noun, dude. I'm telling you, it's all you got to do. Pick any verb, and then any noun. You're good. You got a band name. That's how it works, dude.
Yeah, my daughter keeps track all day long. Like I'll say something stupid, or my wife will say something silly, and my daughter be like, "Oh, that's a band name. Where are they from?" And I always have to that's our response. I have to pick the city that the band is from.
Nice.
So we just have keep a running list of terrible band names.
So you're in Nashville now, huh?
Yep. Yeah. So we moved here almost 12 years ago. Just kind of wanted to get out of where we were, and I had spent like 15 years in LA before moving up north with my wife. And we didn't want our girls to grow up in LA. And, I had just been in a situation where we were really close to the band. And so it was like, well, let's go somewhere that's musical, but, kind of start over, find our own thing that's outside of the regular system.
Where were you at, Northern California?
In Chico.
Oh, nice. Okay.
College town.
My
Chico
sister went to
State.
college in Chico. I know.
There you go.
I spent many, many nights on Ivy. For sure, dude.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, party town. So we moved to Nashville. I had one friend here, and we came and stayed with him for 2 weeks with his family and just kind of explored the area. And the last day we were here, it was 2011, so the housing market was still cratered, and it was very quiet. Nobody was moving to Nashville yet. And we found this house that had a space where I could put a drum studio in. And it was just like, all right, let's make the move. Let's try something new. So thankfully, that's where we were when COVID hit, because California went crazy. Where her family's from, New York, where my family is from, went crazy. And it was just kind of like, all right, well, we can't exist in either of those places. But here we had a lot of support and a lot of like-minded people. Whereas when I would go to LA during COVID and out for photo shoots and video shoots and stuff, everybody was terrified and 3 masks on and a face shield and in their car driving alone. And I was like, this is feels like a war zone. And then I come back to Tennessee and everyone's just going about their business.
No one gave a shit.
And yeah, it was, we gave shit, but it wasn't debilitating. It wasn't like everybody couldn't fathom leaving the house. It was, things kind of went back to normal. Like we were cautious, kind of waited to see where it was going. And then it was like, oh, okay, yeah, well, we can't live like that. So let's go back to our lives.
I've told that story a lot on the show. I met my wife in Iowa in the beginning of 2020. and I came back from a convention, and I was flying in and out of SFO every weekend, which, by the
Oh,
way, is a international airport, and 5,000 people a day travel between China and San Francisco.
yeah.
And I was flying in and out of SFO every weekend. I flew home. I had a headache, a runny nose. I was working in healthcare. They were like, you can't come to work until you get a test. They were only testing 500 people a day in the whole state of California. They
Oh my
refused to
God.
test me unless I was dying. My job wouldn't let me come back unless I had a test. So I called my fiance. I said, hey, not fiance now, or my wife now, but my girlfriend at the time. Hey, I'm gonna come back to Iowa for 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and then I'm gonna head back to California. And actually, my flight left SFO at 11:55 p.m. And at midnight, they instituted the 24-hour lockdowns. And so I took off with a suitcase and a backpack to Iowa, in the middle of podunk corn country. And
Mm-hmm.
I have never ever been back to California except for once. We drove out there to visit my grandma and my mom up in Oregon. My mom lives in Portland. And so that's the only time I've been back ever since. Now we have this big, huge family, and I love Iowa. And I can imagine that there's much to be said the same about Tennessee. Tennessee was kind of along the same lines, especially outside. I'm sure outside of the city, especially. But I will say this: Nashville. I've been to Nashville once in my life, and it was the most fun I've ever had in a city. That place is just absolutely a blast. There's music on every street corner, everywhere you go. People
Yeah.
are playing music. There's bars and clubs that are 4 stories. They have rooftop bars, and every
Yeah.
story has a different band playing on it.
Different band. Yep.
It's so cool, dude.
It's such a fun town, and we live, about 25 miles south of downtown Nashville, so it's kind of the best of both worlds where we're in a smaller community, but the city's there if you want it, but you don't even have to know it's there if you don't want. So it's a really nice kinda small town vibe here, which reminded both myself and my wife of where we grew up, which
Sure.
was nice for our kids.
So
Um,
you grew up in small town New York then?
yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm from a place about an hour south of Rochester, Western New York called Arkport. And yeah, about 1,100 people maybe. I had like 23 kids in my high school class. Very, very small.
I grew up in a small
And
suburb of 190,000 people in
Mhm.
California.
a little different.
I understand the type of community. My town was about 6,000 people.
He's an
Yeah.
Iowa born and bred
We
kid
had-
Yeah.
over here, yeah.
At the start of my final year of high school, we had 121 kids, and 89 of them graduated.
My graduating class
they
was
were-
1,900 people.
Yeah, my class was
Jesus.
exceptionally stupid.
Yeah.
Normally there were not double-digit kids that didn't graduate.
Or maybe
per
they
year.
weren't. Maybe they were too smart for school. I know I was.
Oh no! One of them
I'm a high school
at
dropout.
20. One of them at 20 years old got shot by his drug dealer.
Okay,
so.
fair. Well, I was definitely a high school dropout. I just could not focus on high
Mhm.
school. It wasn't for me, man.
Yeah.
So, and then I joined the military like like a real dum dum.
Yeah, we did have JC send us a super chat. He said one of my favorite Offspring songs was Blackballed. Now I have to see Pete get blackballed by them.
Thanks for the super. Yeah, that sucks, dude. It's just such a heartbreaking fucking thing, Pete. Like I just can't. I don't know. I can't wrap my head around it in this space. You know what I mean? Of all the spaces, it was like the one space where I was like, yeah, those people will tell the authority to fuck off. No, they didn't.
Yeah, I mean that was the hardest thing for me is to wrap my head around it. Like it took a couple months of just confusion and whiplash of like, did that really just happen? Did our lives just get like a rug yanked out from under us and overnight, my whole family was erased. It was a hard thing to accept. And then you're like, okay, well, I still have to feed my family. I still have to move things forward. Like I'm the sole breadwinner of our family. My wife has always homeschooled our girls. Like that's our arrangement. So it's like, all right, well, I gotta pick myself up, get back to work, and find a new way forward. And it's a hustle. It's different than being in private jets and flying around the world and playing big festivals. But I really enjoy what I'm doing. I feel like I'm creative again, which I hadn't been for so long. I think in a lot of situations, you are, especially as the drummer, being in a support position, you're really supporting somebody else's vision, and especially when you're in a side person situation, like you're paid to play really well, but you're paid to kind of follow the script and not have an opinion. And so it's been nice to kind of stretch out again and spread out and feel like, oh, I have a say in this. I'm not waiting for a call saying you need to be here this day. It doesn't matter what's going on for your family or for anything else. Like, this comes first, and you're prioritizing somebody else's vision and like pushing that boulder uphill for someone else's benefit that's benefiting 3,000 times more than you are. And so it's really nice to be reminded of like, oh no, you get to be creative. You get to actually put your heart into something. You get to bring yourself to a project instead of just playing somebody else's script. And for me, that rebirth has made the entire process worth it.
Sure, sure. And I imagine just being able to spend so much time with your family too. I know how good that feels.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know a lot of people in the industry, like crew guys and band guys alike, that were like, "Hey, I started doing different line of work during COVID, and I get to eat dinner with my family and be home every night, and I'm
I'm
good.
not
I'm not
going
going
back."
back.
Yeah.
Not going back."
Well,
And they're stoked.
you may not be on the tour with Offspring anymore, but you will also not be entitled to financial compensation when this thing all falls apart down the road. And I apologize for that. Pete, I'm a big fan, man. I really appreciate you coming on, dude. You are spectacular, a much needed voice in this space. Where can these people find you, support you, listen to you, all that great stuff?
Sure, absolutely. You can find me on Twitter or Instagram, just at Pete Parada, right there on the screen. And my website is peteparada.com. You can hear my work with Tim Pool there and other artists that I've done drum tracks for. If you're looking for drum tracks, hit me up there, send me a message. We'll make some music together. Also at splice.com, which is a music production website. I have a sound pack there, Pete Parada's Pop Punk Toolkit. It's full of about 500 different loops and beats and all tempos and stuff of the early 2000s punk rock style that I'm known for. You can take all the parts and pieces and put your own music together with me on drums. It's a really, really cool site. You can check that out. And my new band, The Defiant, you can find at The Defiant Official on Instagram and The Defiant USA on Twitter, or thedefiantofficial.com, where you can read about the band and send us a message, sign up for the mailing list, check out some merch. We have these t-shirts, and the first single will be out next month, and the rest of the album later this year. And I'm really excited to get it all out there.
We'll be rocking some of the Defiant shirts on Break the Cycle for sure. There's no doubt about it. I do have to say how beautiful it is that you, in the beginning of the show, you're like, oh, I don't play punk, I want to play hard stuff, and then you're like, oh yeah, by the way, I have a pop punk pack out that has all the pop punk stuff I'm known for.
Well, I'd make a metal pack, but I'm most known for
I know
stuff,
it's so funny because you that's sometimes you don't get to pick your path, man. You just end up being really good at something,
Yeah, you fall into it. Life is funny that way.
Absolutely. Hey Pete, man, I appreciate you so much coming on, dude. It was
Thanks for having me.
It was really my pleasure, man. Thank you again.
Awesome. Have a good night, guys.
Hey, you too, brother. All right, guys. Another awesome show on Break Cycle. Pete's great. Please go follow him, support his new band. Dude, that new band, I don't know. Listen, if you're
I'm gonna be checking it out.
If you're an old guy like me, okay, and you're 40 years old and you grew up listening to any type of punk rock, the name Mighty Mighty Boss Tones immediately sparks something in your head. Just because, I mean, they used to play snippets of Mighty Mighty Boss Tones on Beavis and Butthead, dude. Okay, this is how long ago we're talking about. But also, Pete was in Face to Face, which is like legendary poster punk, like skate punk band. I mean, just one of the best of all time. He was also in Saves the Day, so if you were into like emo pop punk, you got Saves the Day, and then Offspring. Fuck those guys. Listen, I wasn't gonna say it while Pete was on the show. But I really stopped. I stopped mostly listening to them after Pretty Fly for a White Guy came out. I did. There was still some good songs that came out after that, but it was just really hard for me to, I don't know, listen after that because I was so into their like fast, fun stuff, before that. But Pete's an amazing drummer, and he's kept the punk rock spirit that all punk rock bands should have kept through 2021, 2022, and I'll support that guy. It's just like the Skillet thing, dude. I knew who Pete was already, okay? And when I saw Pete I actually saw Pete on Tim Pool, and I don't watch Tim Pool.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I watched an episode of Tim Pool,
but he could be our in,
and I do know about his band, and I do know about him making music with Tim Pool, and I don't want to listen to Tim Pool's music, but I will listen to Tim Pool's music.
Yeah,
because
Tim
of Pete.
Pool's
It's the
music,
same with the
it's
skill.
alright.
I love, but dude, the guy's just so fucking cool, man.
Oh yeah.
What a cool dude.
Well, he was saying, yeah, I don't have like any other skills besides drumming. Nah, he is a phenomenal storyteller.
Dude, he's amazing. What a fucking good. If you have a podcast that has a good platform, get that man on. He knows how to talk. He tells amazing stories. I'm glad I started with the music shit. Because I was like, do we want to go right into now? Let's talk about music shit, because he had some fucking great stories. And then I was kind of in the background. I was like, oh, you know what, dude? I'm pretty sure I saw Pete play in like the early 2000s with fucking Face to Face, because I probably saw Face to Face, I don't know, 10 times or something. So I'm sure I've seen him in other shows. But that show was a memorable show because it was the end of the tour, like he was saying. And I remember there was more pranks they played on stage. I can't remember if it was Thrice that came out or Midtown that came out and like taped dildos to the fucking other band. It was crazy, dude. It was a crazy fun show. And me and my best friend John Marshall were out there, who goes by Vinny Marshall now. We're at the show together. We drove his busted ass 1983 Honda Prelude all the way over the mountains into fucking 2.5 hours to get into Santa Cruz. And there was one point where we were like, didn't know if we were gonna make it to the top of the mountain to get back down. It was like we were like literally doing this with the car, like go. So we had some fun times, and that was such a memorable point for me, and the fact that it was a memorable show for him too. Just that was great, man. The guy tells great stories. Guys, we're doing shows maybe twice a week again. We'll see. Yeah. I'm thinking about it. If you guys keep coming and watching, and Ryan keeps showing up at my house every Tuesday anyways, we might as well just do shows. I don't know. But great show, guys. I appreciate you all coming out. Ryan, you got anything before we take off?
Like, comment, subscribe, share this with your friends, your mom, your family, everyone.
Yes, please share the
everyone
show.
You know and love.
Please share the show. If you guys are watching the show, share it. Just fucking share it. Help us out. We need to grow the platform. Help me do it.
And the only real way we can do that is spreading the word.
I will start bringing on bigger guests and fun guests like Pete. If you guys are gonna watch, I will. I know a few people. But we'll be back for another show on Thursday. Until then, don't forget to break the cycle.
Due to legal reasons, I just have to explain. The lyrics of my last song may seem to contain a violent call to action in the verse and refrain, but I just meant it in Minecraft. The helicopter part was in reference to GTA 5 and the things you do. So any violence you commit, I am not an excuse, because I just meant it in Minecraft. A chipper is my friend and he's constantly cold. Accusations of incitement getting totally old. Make your own choices, yeah, you have control, because I just meant it in Minecraft. Obviously I would never advocate force, unless there's due process and a trial, of course. And if you're convicted, we will make you a corpse. In Minecraft, just in Minecraft. Nothing I mean, you know it. No product finished cause it closed for COVID. Holy shit, I think